Welcome to Babcock Hoops. I'm Calais Goord, alongside NBA Draft Analyst and former NBA agent Matt Babcock.
Hey, Callie, we got an exciting time of the year. As an NBA Draft Analyst, I spent a lot of time on the road scouting these guys and honestly spent years evaluating them as early as when they're 15, 16 years old. And so we've got March Madness, we've got the Final Four, we've got the end of the NBA regular season coming. It's time to start peeling back the curtain on the intricacies of the basketball world and the different layers of it.
Well, I'm super excited to dive into it. Can you tell us the audience a bit about what we should expect on the show?
Yeah, like I said, we want to peel back the curtain on the basketball world, and it's really become a very sophisticated, complex inner workings with NIL and all the different changes in the overlap between college basketball and the NBA. So really, like I said, peel back the curtain, really kind of take an inside look of how everything works, and obviously a lot of NBA draft analysis, but kind of really get in the weeds on the basketball business.
Well, I'm super excited to dive into this. So, Matt, can you please give us your 2025 NBA Draft mock top 5?
Yeah, sure. So throughout the season, how I do things strategically is I do a big board, so essentially just rankings. Then once the NBA regular season ends, which is right around the corner, I start doing a mock draft because we have a better idea of which teams are going to be selecting where. But as far as right now, the top 5 that I have at number 1, no surprise here, Cooper Flagg from Duke. I expect Cooper to be the number 1 pick, regardless of who gets that first pick. And right behind him, I've got Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, both from Rutgers, all freshmen. At number 4, VJ Edgecombe from Baylor. And then at number 5, Trey Johnson from Texas. So we've got a bunch of young guys, all freshmen, in the top 5 right now.
Amazing. So let's start with Cooper Flagg. So what team are you predicting that he's going to go to this season for the NBA?
I'm not quite sure yet. The NBA draft lottery will be held in mid-May during the NBA draft combine. And like I mentioned before, I think regardless of who gets that number 1 pick, I am expecting Cooper Flagg to be that guy. And so I'm not sure who the lucky team is yet, but we'll see. And, to kind of break down Cooper as a prospect, he's a guy, everybody in the basketball world has known about him for years. He was a big ticket name in high school. And, he reclassified. He should be a senior in high school right now. He's 18 years old and has really taken the college basketball world by storm. Duke's going into the Final Four this weekend, and it's really just been an exciting, thing to see. And, I think he's pretty much a lock to be the number 1 pick, but he's 18 years old, and I think there's plenty of upside still left to untap there.
I'd love to touch up on how Cooper Flagg compares to the other previous NBA first draft picks, such as Ben Simmons and those guys that obviously were first round picks in previous seasons.
Yeah, no, sure. I think that's a great question, and I have looked at this, and I mean, in the last decade or so, I think half the drafts have had a guy that's been pretty much clear cut number 1. I think about Cat in his draft coming out of Kentucky, Ben Simmons, as you mentioned, Zion Williamson, Victor, Cade Cunningham, and all guys that at some point in their careers have all been all-star level guys. And so I do think Cooper falls into that category for sure. I'd be shocked if he's not the number 1 pick. And honestly, I'd probably be shocked if he's not an all-star. And I think the expectation is his upside is can he become a franchise guy, a Hall of Fame player? Time will tell. But I mean, that's whoever's getting that number 1 pick, that's what they're hoping for.
And is it ever a negative that these players become first round picks?
Yeah, I mean, the pressure of a number 1 pick is certainly there. But I think, a guy like Cooper, he's already proven he can handle a lot of pressure. I mean, just see what he's done at Duke. I mean, taking on that heavy load of being the star player on, perhaps the best team in the country as an 18-year-old that's supposed to be a senior in high school. And so I do think he's ready to kind of step into that role, even though there is a lot of pressure.
That's amazing. And I would love to dive a bit deeper as well in terms of if previous first round potential picks would have been better to stay on at college with NIL deals and things, obviously, with how the industry is going now.
Yeah, no, it's a funny thing to think about. Sort of looking back on guys, what kind of impact they would have in today's landscape. And I mean, all of these guys would be big ticket guys in the NIL space. And I do think with how things stand now, it still is advantageous for these top picks to come out. And sort of breaking it down a little bit further is, they'll be set to make a lot of money being number one picks or being top picks. But I think the biggest difference is that there's a lot of safety in a guy like for Cooper Flagg, for example, that even if things don't go as well as we're all hoping, he's going to be a good NBA player and will be up for a second contract after his rookie deal starts. And so getting that process started just gets him that much closer to that second deal. Whereas it's, say, a late first round pick, there's a lot more uncertainty of, are they going to stick in the NBA long term? So if they're able to make, let's say, $2-3 million a year in college, it might make sense to kind of delay the process of starting their NBA process. And so just very, very interesting times right now because it's all changing so quickly. But yeah, these top guys, whether it was years ago or now, I think these guys are going to still be coming out year in, year out.
Amazing. So we'll dive into a bit more of your second pick. So why is he a close second, and what team do you feel that he's going to be going to?
Again, we'll see how the draft lottery shakes out. And right now I've got Dylan Harper at number 2. But the truth is, I really am open to the idea of a different kind of combination between Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and VJ Edgecombe. With Dylan, he's a 6'6" on-ball creator. Really, fits the NBA well. He's almost like a bigger version of Jalen Brunson, who's had so much recent success with the Knicks. And then, Ace Bailey, very different type of prospect. He's a 6'10", versatile, dynamic shooter. I mean, he's hitting fadeaways like a Kevin Durant. And, I think he's really just kind of scratching the surface of what he can become. And then behind him is VJ Edgecombe, a 6'4" guard. He's not really a point guard, not really a shooting guard, but he is a dynamic athlete. I mean, think about Dwayne Wade, Russell Westbrook. And from an upside standpoint, of course, he's got to do a number of things to get to that point. But that's where the excitement's coming from, is he's got that style of play where even though he's not penciled in as a true point guard or shooting guard, you want the ball in his hands because he's dynamic. And again, another guy, I think that's just scratching the surface of his potential.
I love to hear this. And I would love to also know how large is the gap between Flagg and the rest of the draft class?
I think it's wide, but it's a sort of a unique situation. What kind of creates that wide gap is the safety in Cooper Flagg. I mentioned he's 18 years old, so he's still a kid, and he's already, I think, ready to contribute at a high level in the NBA. And looking back at some of these prospects in years past, that have had sort of the same sort of categorization of being, the probable or sure thing to be the number one pick. Some of them have had some question marks. I think back to like Ben Simmons. His swing skill was shooting. And although Ben Simmons had some decent years and all-star level years, the outside shooting, along with some injuries, have held him back. Or Zion Williamson's another guy, had so much hype going into his draft and was a clear-cut number one, but there was questions about his conditioning and how his body would hold up. And time will still tell with Zion. He's got things together right now, but there's been issues up to this point. And with Cooper, I think before the season started, I think some of the questions, if we were nitpicking, is he able to be an offensive engine for a team? And then, outside shooting being his swing skill. And he's carried Duke on his back. I mean, the college basketball landscape right now is so competitive, and Duke is probably the most talented team with Cooper leading the charge, and he's been their offensive engine. And then the outside shooting, I mean, he's already proven all of those doubters wrong there. I mean, he shot 37% on a pretty high volume. And so there's not really any big concerns with Cooper. Of course, I think a lot needs to go right for him to become this superstar Hall of Fame player. But worst case scenario right now, he's looking like he's going to be a very, very good player in the NBA day one.
I love that. And you name a lot of different prospects for the NBA draft class. How deep is that this season or this year?
This is a great draft, at least at the top. I mean, I really like the lottery, and the first round is probably going to be very good. It's pretty interesting. The second round is very unpredictable right now, and with college basketball and NIL and these kids making so much money, it's really hard to determine or pinpoint who's going to be in the second round. So depth overall is very questionable.
Matt, so how does the 2025 draft compare to the other drafts in previous years?
Yeah, I think the draft class that reminds me the most of it is just from a couple years ago in 2023, where we had Victor Wembanyama, who was the clear-cut number one pick, similar to Cooper Flagg. But after him, I mean, there was a grouping of guys with some all-star potential. Obviously, they're still early on in their careers, and time will tell, how they fully develop. But I mean, after Victor, we had Brandon Miller, who's done a great job for the Hornets. Scoot Henderson, who's still a work in progress, but has shown flashes of that incredible upside. And then the Thompson twins, who I'm really happy to see have really come around specifically on men in Houston. Looks like a blooming star. And so, with Cooper Flagg and that next group of guys with Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and VJ Edgecombe, I can see some comparisons just as far as the clear-cut number one and all-star potential right behind him.
I love that you mentioned the NIL deals. That's something that's definitely changing the game in basketball, and obviously every other sport. And I would love for you to touch up on, especially having been a sports agent as well, how things have changed throughout the years. Now having the NIL deals, is it even worth the prospects going into the NBA, because now they can make more money in these NIL deals and staying in college? I would love to get your perspective on that.
No, sure. And it's just such a fascinating area of the business right now. And with college basketball, everything is evolving and changing. It seems like day by day. But the fact of the matter is these kids are making a lot of money. And, for example, let's say a fringe first round pick or a second round pick, a lot of these level of talents are able to generate, let's say, $2-3 million per season playing in college, which is a number that is inflated since last season even. And to really break that down, if a guy goes in the second round, they're fully negotiated deals. And a lot of them might be at risk of getting two-way contracts. And how a two-way contract works is it is half of a rookie minimum contract. So next year, if I remember correctly, the number will be 1.27 million for a minimum rookie deal. So half of that, we're talking about roughly over 600,000. And then on top of that, is only half of that can be guaranteed on a two-way contract. So you can look at a kid that potentially could be a second-round pick with only guaranteed $300,000-ish, or go back to school and make $2-3 million. And so that's what I'm predicting to drive a lot of these kids back to school, and it's going to change the second round probably dramatically.
For sure, 100%. And I would love to also hear your take on how you feel that's changed the game of the way that the players play. Do you feel that maybe their attention's taken more on to the NIL deals rather than actually the game on the court?
It's a great question, and I think the ripple effects are just beginning. But a few things that come to mind there is one: these teams in college are getting older, and I think subsequently, as I mentioned before, this ripple effect that's going to drive a lot of these players back to school. What's going to happen is over time, the second round is going to be filled with a lot of older players. I think the Cooper Flaggs and the Dylan Harpers of the world, these 18, 19-year-olds coming out to be lottery picks, that's going to stay intact. But the late first round, the second round. We're going to get guys that are closer to being finished products. And so I think from a scouting perspective, we're going to be evaluating these guys a little differently. And instead of it, being, looking at raw potential and upside, teams and guys like myself are going to start looking at guys in these ranges of who's ready to play right away. And to me, it's a really a great thing. One, college basketball is going to get better overall. I think it already has. Look at the Final Four. We got 4 number 1 seeds. That's not an accident. These teams were put together carefully with talented kids that are ready to go right away. And that's just going to, over time, kind of contribute to the second round and the depth of NBA drafts being good. It just might take a couple years here.
Matt, we've seen hundreds of players hit the transfer portal.
Hey, thousands.
Thousands. How early are conversations taking place between agents and interested schools?
It's interesting. I wrote an article recently about it's titled "College Basketball Evolution," and I kind of touched on a number of these things. And it's the wild, wild west right now. And I think the lack of regulation with it all, it's chaos. And I think different schools and different individuals in this space, some operating more aggressively than others. But the back channeling is frequent. I think there's seeds being planted year round. Back channeled conversations across the board. So like I said, it is absolutely the wild, wild west right now.
Amazing. And myself being from the UK as well, I know you do international scouting too. So I'd love to touch up on that and kind of get your perspective on the talent over in Europe, and obviously outside the US, and obviously within the US as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, international basketball is continuing to get better and better. I mean, look, just a couple of years ago, we had Wemby as the number one pick, and who's taken the NBA by storm in such a short amount of time, and Luka Doncic and Giannis and Embiid and Jokic. It's become a very international, global game, and I don't see that slowing down much at all. It probably won't stop. Continue to evolve and grow. And this year, our first group of guys aren't international players, but there are some good players. Nolan Traore, Jon Berenger. I mean, there's a number of guys that I think can make a major impact. And another interesting wrinkle, too, with the NIL is a lot of these top international players, I think, are going to start going to college just because the financial upside for them is so much higher to play at school than it is to stay overseas. And so, again, another ripple effect and kind of a dramatic change in all these processes.
Definitely. And I love that your background is being a sports agent. So I would love to know your views on how early the evaluation starts for basketball agents in this climate compared to when you were a basketball agent, obviously, before.
I mean, I think agents, scouts, pretty much everybody, sort of in the trenches in the basketball world, the evaluation process starts early. I mean, for me personally, I spend a lot of time going to high school events. For example, I mean, the next couple of weeks, I'm going to the Final Four, but I'm not going to the Final Four games. USA Basketball is holding a mini camp for their junior national team. So there'll be a bunch of the top high school kids. And then I fly from there to Portland for the Nike Hoop Summit, which is essentially like an all-star game or all-American game. But I'll be there for 5 days, watching them practice. And yeah, so we get a head start as much as we can. Usually when the kids, are 14, 15, 16 years old. So for these, top rated guys, the evaluation process goes on for years.
It sounds like you're traveling all over the place, and it's a very busy schedule for you for most of the year. I would love to get an idea of what a day in the life of a basketball scout is like for yourself, obviously from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, kind of just a bit of a breakdown.
No, sure. I mean, it really depends on the time of year. As college basketball season starts, my strategic approach is early in the season, I travel very aggressively. November and December, there's so many, neutral location games and tournaments. This year, I spent a week in the Bahamas watching a bunch of these games, and a lot of these prospects we're even talking about, and it's traveling around and kind of covering my bases, getting a foundation of these top prospects early, so I can kind of pick and choose my spots there on out. And once conference plays, I do a little bit more regional work. I live in Denver, Colorado, so I'm able to cover the Big 12 easily with Boulder, Colorado, in my backyard. And then once we get into March, I hit college tournament or conference tournaments hard. I went to the Big 10 tournament this year and thought about hitting the Big East too, but the Big 10 was so good, I stayed there the whole time. And then once the pre-draft process starts, I travel a little bit. I'll go to some high school events, as I mentioned. I'll travel around watching some of these prospects work out individually at their different setups, usually in the big markets, Vegas, Chicago, LA, Miami, so on and so forth. And but the travel gets a little bit less aggressive, and I get busier because everybody wants to start talking about the draft. But at this point, and at that point, I should have a pretty good grip on what these players are all about, and so it takes a little bit of pressure on me doing the research and more about start talking about it and doing shows just like this.
I love that. And speaking of walking into the Final Four weekend, which NBA draft prospect has elevated their draft stock the most?
I mean, I think that the guys that have elevated their stock, unfortunately, aren't in the Final Four to me. And there's a long list of guys I could mention here, but two that I want to mention specifically: Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma. This kid has just been, on this upward trajectory the entire season. And I mentioned, I go aggressively, early in the season, and Oklahoma was in the Bahamas at the Battle for Atlantis, and Jeremiah Fears put on a show. And I think I was one of the first analysts to put him in a mock draft, and he's just chipped away and moved up, sort of incrementally the entire season. I have him as high as number 6 right now, and he's just a very exciting prospect that I think fits the NBA very well. 6'3", 6'4", very tough, high usage in pick and roll, which that's the NBA right there. Is a lot of pick and roll, and with increased spacing, I think he could be a problem. And I think he's ready to go right now. But I mean, projecting where he'll be in a few years, could be a top tiered point guard. The other player is Derek Queen from Maryland, and is an interesting prospect. I've watched him since he was early on in high school. It was a big name guy. He was at Montverde Prep Academy and played with Cooper Flagg and a really talented team. They had Cooper Flagg, Asa Newell, who's at Georgia, who's probably going to be a lottery pick, and then Liam McNeely at UConn. So a totally stacked high school team. Maybe it was in a little bit of the shadow of Cooper Flagg, and he just had a terrific year at Maryland. Big-bodied five, kind of from a physical standpoint, sort of like a throwback Al Jefferson, sort of a bigger-bodied guy that probably needs to have his weight and conditioning monitored. But from a skill set standpoint, does all the things that Al Jefferson did as far as having the touch and the feel around the rim. But this kid could put it on the floor. He's shown promise that he might be able to shoot it from outside. He can really pass. He's really, really helped himself throughout this year. And in March, obviously hit that big shot against Colorado State at the buzzer, which was questionable whether it was a travel or not. But great shot nonetheless. And I've got him as high as number 7. So very, very excited about those two guys.
Well, there's a lot of people that definitely, a lot of players that are definitely going to be a tight call for the NBA draft this season. And on that note, are there any specific players or matchups you're focused on in the Final Four specifically that you've just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, both games. I mean, there's a number of narratives that I could kind of break down here that I'm going to be watching closely. I mean, the heavyweight matchup here with Duke and Houston, it's just, I mean, just as a spectator, as a fan, I'm really excited to watch it. And I'm looking to see, Duke's filled with a number of young prospects. We got Con Canuple's a freshman, Matt Malawach, and then obviously Cooper Flagg are all freshmen that are projected as potential lottery picks. And they're going against a tough Houston team. I mean, Houston's team defense is swarming. I mean, I feel like I'm watching like the Chicago Bears in the 80s. I mean, they're trapping, they're doubling everything, and really putting a lot of pressure on their opponents. I'm interested to see how Duke's young guys handle that pressure. And then on the other side, we've got a couple of younger guys that are kind of falling in that category of like, do they stay in the draft? Do they go back to school? Those being Alex Condon from Florida, a big guy who was just a sophomore. And, if he's in the draft, he's got a chance to be a first-round pick. But there's a question of, okay, is he a lock to be a first-round pick? And then the other guy is Tahad Pettiford, a small guard on Auburn. And small guards are, pretty quickly written off in the NBA draft and the NBA these days. But Pettiford might be an exception, and he kind of falls into that boat too of he's got enough to definitely test the waters if he'd like to, and there will be interest. But he's on the fence there, and so I'm watching to see how those guys produce. And I think producing on such a big stage and sort of a platform for exposure, if they do well, could help them.
I agree. And staying on the topic of college, the next college hoop season, what are the top 5 programs with the largest NIL bags?
It's interesting in the NIL space in general. It's so loose right now. There's so many different rumblings of how much money kids are getting paid or what schools' budgets are, and that's something that it's almost impossible to monitor. And as an example for comparison, being an NBA agent, everything that's being done in the NBA is accessible to the agents. As far as the different salary structures, the different clauses put in contracts. As with college, there's no regulation really, and it's loose. But to answer your question, most of the schools you think have the money do have the money. So the blue bloods of the world, the Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, Carolina, they're spending big. But then you've got some wild card programs too. BYU is spending so much money. It's been rumored that incoming freshman AJ DeBance is going to make $7 million in his NIL deal this next year at BYU. And St. John's, Rick Pitino is putting together, an incredible team this year, but he's already got commitments for some transfers that are probably big ticket guys as far as how much money they'll generate. I'm not certain how much money they're actually going to make, but I'm guessing it's probably $2-3 million each. And so it's a rapidly evolving space that I'm doing my best to monitor. But like I said, it's challenging.
Sounds like a lottery ticket, definitely, of a gamble of what it's going to be. Matt, talk about all the exciting work you've done on babcockhoops.com.
No, sure. Like we've talked about, I spend a lot of time evaluating these players, and it's a year-round thing for me. Even though we spend most of the time talking about it during the pre-draft process and leading up to the draft. This is a 365 gig, and I'm not doing it by myself. We've got a full team of scouts that are kind of spread around the country and the world. Even we got some guys in Europe, and we've been doing comprehensive scout reports on all these prospects year round. You can find all of them on babcockhoops.com. I want to say we've got like 100 and something reports from this year of guys that will be in this draft. Then other guys that are testing the waters that could go back to school and be prospects for next year. So yeah, definitely, I would suggest checking out some of these reports. Our guys do a great job. We have various content too. I write different stories on all the different topics that, related to the NBA draft, scouting, the basketball world, NIL, college basketball. And then, obviously, Calais, really excited to get you in the fold here. Obviously, you're co-hosting this show, but really looking forward to you kind of taking a deep dive into some different areas of the game on and off the court. Doing some Q&As, one-on-ones with some prospects. And so, yeah, we're really just sort of trying to create a lot of varied content of really kind of peeling back the curtain of the game of basketball. So I'm really excited to kind of keep this going and really get into the pre-draft process, which is our bread and butter.
I love that, and I'm so excited to be a part of this. Thank you so much for having me, and especially with my background as an agent, a model agent myself, it's definitely something that I've seen the other side of it in the fashion world, and starting from a young age as well. I've seen the changes over the last 10, 11 years in the fashion world, and it seems that that's definitely something that's happened in the sports world as well, in terms of the NIL deals, and the athletes are definitely taking the models' jobs. So that's definitely a difference that I've seen within our industry. But I'm super excited to interview and speak to these players and NBA draft prospects, and kind of diving a little bit deeper, not just about them on the court, but also off the court in terms of who they are as a person, their hobbies, and just get a little bit more of a deeper insight to who they are as people. So I'm super, super excited for this.
No, it's great, Kyle. I'm so excited too, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So we're just getting started here.
This is Babcock Hoops. Like, subscribe, and comment.